happening again. Another woke American team is getting crushed at the Tokyo Olympics. It makes you wonder what wokeism does to you, doesn't it? Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at the shock stomping that the U.S. women's gymnastics team got at the hands of Russia. We're going to see just how woke that women's gymnastics team really is. And President Trump is going to help us make some sense of how wokeism always ends up making one lose in the end. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Wonderful to be with you as always. We are your daily fake news antidote. As each and every day, we provide patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe. Before we jump into things here, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that is collagen. Available on my special website, healthwithsteveturley.com. Many health experts now agree that taking collagen regularly can revitalize your body, can make your skin, your bones, even your hair look and feel more healthy and youthful. And if you click on that link below right now, you're going to get up to 51% off your order. So do not wait. Click on that link below today and get your own collagen supply. You'll be glad that you did. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. We've got some more shocking news coming out of the Tokyo Olympics. The heavily favored U.S. women's gymnastics team, who are looking for their third straight Olympic gold medal, got crushed by Russia in the qualifying round. And the ultra-left sports media, they just can't believe it. They're utterly beside themselves. First, the U.S. women's soccer team gets humiliated by Sweden after taking the knee to BLM. Now, we have the single greatest sports team ever assembled in the history of humanity getting stomped on by Russia. Now, keep in mind, Simone Biles, the leader of the U.S. women's team, is absolutely beyond reproach in the eyes of the media. As far as they're concerned, she is the single greatest sports champion in the history of athletic competition. And so this simply wasn't supposed to happen. There's no way that the U.S. team could be beaten by that evil, tyrannical, authoritarian Russia. Not Russia! I mean, you know, the ones who stole the 2016 presidential election, right? That's what CNN and MSNBC were telling us 24/7 for 3 years. Donald Trump was an illegitimate president because Vladimir Putin stole the election from Hillary. So Russia is behind every evil under the sun, and now they're beating the greatest team in the history of the world. Now, technically, of course, if you've been following the Olympics, technically, the women got stomped by the Russian Olympic Committee, right? The nation of Russia is technically not allowed to compete because of doping scandals. So Russian athletes are competing under the banner of the ROC, or the Russian Olympic Committee. But that's more or less negligible. As we're seeing here, they can still crush the once thought immaculate and unbeatable U.S. team. Now, of course, this follows on the heels of what happened to the woke U.S. women's soccer team. And you will definitely want to check out my video on that humiliation. It will make your day. We get into how the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, has had it with this wokeism. How LeBron James is having a temper tantrum over their banning BLM demonstrations on the podiums and the like. Definitely check that video out. It's going to absolutely make your day. You're going to love it. But to be sure, wokeism is getting trounced on a bit here in these games, and the U.S. women's gymnastics team seems to be the latest victim in a get woke, go broke universe. Now, to be fair, as I understand it, qualifying scores do not carry over to the finals, and the U.S. women's team most certainly can still win. But here's the key. So can Russia. So can Japan. So can China, Italy, Germany. The point is that this once heralded unstoppable American team just got stomped. And so now the competition's wide open. Needless to say, nobody expected this. If you listen to all the hype from the ultra left-wing sports media, this was the greatest sports team ever assembled in the history of athletic competition. And most importantly, because they, as is the case for the gymnastics industry as a whole, because this team is so faithfully woke. These are the paragons of social justice concern, and no one, frankly, fits that bill more than the leader of the team, Simone Biles. Now, you may not know, but Biles is an avid defender of BLM, Black Lives Matter. Commenting on BLM for a recent interview for Vogue magazine, Biles said, quote, "We need change. We need justice for the black community. with the peaceful protests. Yes, you heard that right. With the peaceful protests. It's the start of change, but it's sad that it took all of this for people to listen. She even commented on Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by Louisville police who were investigating her apartment as part of a drug bust. She said, quote, "Breonna will be remembered. She's going to find justice." And of course, Bile endeared herself as a champion of LGBT rights when she starred in a number of Uber Eats commercials with Queer Eye star Jonathan Van Ness. When the organization 1 Million Moms criticized the ad series for pushing a clear LGBT agenda, Simone Bile shot back with a tweet, "The world we live in makes me sad, but I'd do 1 million more commercials with you just to piss everyone off. The LGBTQIA will always have my support and feel welcome on my socials." Another member of the U.S. women's gymnastics team, Jade Carey, actually had to demonstrate her fealty to the BLM cause when she was called out for liking a tweet that had a pro-police slogan, "Back the Blue," on it. She groveled to her Twitter followers saying, "Liking the post was totally a reflex, like by accident, and I 100% stand by the BLM movement and acknowledge police brutality. I'm truly sorry, and I'll be sure I'll never do it again. I promise. I promise. I'll never do it again. Please don't hate me. Please don't hate me. I'll never do it again." So sad. And people like this think they stand for freedom. Other members of the U.S. women's gymnastics team, such as Grace McCullum, demonstrated their fidelity to BLM by posting the black square on their social media accounts for the so-called hashtag Blackout Tuesday, and another member, Jordan Childs, reportedly posted regarding supposed systemic racism, "Let's put this to an end, period." Now, to be sure, the U.S. women's team wasn't the only one infected by wokeism. The Costa Rican gymnast Luciana Alvarado ended her floor routine with a tribute to BLM, taking a knee and tilting her head back with her fist raised towards the sky. Such pandering, unfortunately for her, was not enough to get her into the finals. So she won't be raising her fist in victory anytime soon. And of course, the German women's team is sporting unitards, all in the name of protesting the supposed sexualization of female athletes. I mean, the list just goes on, except, of course, when it comes to Russia. Russia despises this politically correct nonsense, and they focus more on actually competing, and the results speak for themselves. Now, I mentioned earlier the women's soccer team, but what I didn't mention is what President Trump had to say over the weekend about their humiliating loss against Sweden. Trump said precisely what many others are saying. It was wokeism that caused them to lose. Take a look.
Wokeism makes you lose, ruins your mind, and ruins you as a person. You become warped, you become demented. The U.S. women's soccer team is a very good example of what's going on. Earlier this week, they unexpectedly lost to Sweden 3-0. And Americans were happy about it.
You become warped and demented. This is what wokeism does to the human person. And it's precisely because of what we talked about in our last video, last week on the women's soccer embarrassment. Wokeism destroys any semblance of loyalty and fidelity to my neighbor and replaces that loyalty and fidelity with an ideology. I lose my capacity to care for others as my attention is completely bound up with an abstract, and in this case, a radically Marxist ideology. And as the philosopher Alistair McIntyre pointed out, the result is that I can no longer live a fulfilling moral life. And that's because, in effect, I've cut myself off from the national narrative that awakens empathy and sympathy for, and indeed a devotion to the people around me. I mean, that's what patriotism is ultimately about. It's ultimately about cultivating a love for our neighbor. And when you accost, injure, and slander your national narrative, when you accuse your nation of being systemically racist and unjust, you unravel the very basis by which we are morally bound to our neighbor. And so, why would you compete? Why would you sacrifice on behalf of those you so viscerally disdain? Why would you compete for an unjust systemically racist nation. That's what Trump is getting at here. Don't be surprised that once infected with wokeism, our national athletes aren't going to be that interested in winning for their nation. Or how else do you explain Americans actually being happy that their soccer team lost? How can you possibly rationalize that apart from the fact that wokeism destroys empathy and sympathy for my neighbor? They've turned their backs on us, so now we're turning our backs on them. This is the tragedy of wokeism, and it appears that that tragedy has yet found another victim. So we'll certainly keep our eyes on how things develop in women's gymnastics this week, but as for now, nationalist athletes from Russia clearly have the upper hand. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on how even leftists are admitting that the Arizona audit is working. You're not going to want to miss this, so make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.